Hey, this is Mike from the Run Testers. This is the Saucony Kinvara 15, an up-tempo daily trainer. That is definitely an iconic shoe in Saucony's range and definitely a throwback to the kind of up-tempo daily trainers before they were stacked with cushioning plates and everything else. Now, myself and Kieran have both been long-term testing the Kinvara 15, and what we're going to do first is take you through what's new from the previous Kinvaras, the key features that you need to know about as well too, get into our run test, and then let you know whether Saucony Kinvara 15 is an up-tempo daily trainer worth your money. So here's what you need to know about the Saucony Kinvara 15. The Kinvara 15 is built for faster daily training days and sits at £130 in the UK or $120 in the US. You can currently find the Kinvara 14 for closer to £70 or $70 at some retailers. That price puts it up against other up-tempo daily trainers like the Hoka Max 6, Nike Vomero 17, New Balance Rebel V4 and the Asics Nova Blast 4 and 5. The Kinvara 15 weighed in at 192 grams for us in a men's UK size 8, so that's roughly around the same weight as the Kinvara 14 and makes it one of the lightest daily trainers for faster days available right now. In terms of those key stats, it's got a 4mm drop like the 14, with stack heights now measured in at 29mm at the heel and 25mm at the forefoot, so it's going to keep you nice and close to the ground like previous Kinvaras. The upper is made from a single layer mesh with a PWRRUN sock liner inside to boost comfort when you step into it. The midsole is made up of Saucony's PWRRUN cushioning as opposed to the PWRRUN PB used in Saucony's Endorphin shoe line. It's firmer and is built to come alive when running at faster paces. The outsole is an EVA based one with Saucony using a similar ridge design as the 14 that's designed to deliver great flexibility as well as strong grip on roads and pavements.
In testing, I ran in my regular Saucony size, which is a UK 8.5, and though I'd recommend going true to size in the Kinvara 15, I'm not in love with the shaping of the uppers. Now, in other Saucony shoes like the Ride 17, the Speed 4 and the Triumph 22, I think Saucony tends to nail this bit, the fit and the uppers and the comfort, but I find the Kinvara a bit narrow and a bit long. It's just a bit more awkward than those other shoes. It's not a deal breaker, but I think there's room for improvement here with this shoe. But regardless, I would recommend going true to size in the Saucony Kinvara 15.
So in terms of fit, I'd say overall it's been very good for me in the Saucony Kinvara 15, and that is from the first run up until the last one that I've done for our testing. Now, I've got this in a UK size 8. That's my typical running shoe size. That's typically the shoe size that does work for me in Saucony shoes. I generally don't have to go up and down or maybe half size up or half size down. I would say this is true to size. I would caveat that with the fact that it is quite a narrow fitting shoe, which for me, my kind of skinny narrow feet, absolutely fine. But I think, you know, that's something to be mindful here. If you're worried it might be a bit of a tight squeeze, and it might be for some people. In terms of other things, I think the toe box, absolutely fine in terms of that room, in terms of that space and the types of runs and distances I think I would be, you know, ultimately using the Kinvara 15 for. And get back into the middle of the shoe. I think the hole is generally very good as well too. I think, as I mentioned in the first video, I think it could benefit from maybe tweaking and really kind of, you know, wrapping things a little bit closer there, I think, ultimately. But, you know, a minor thing there, wasn't an issue for me. You get to the kind of tongue and lacing. You've got this kind of gently padded, kind of gusseted tongue, which I quite like. And the lockdown has been very good for me. No kind of undue pressure on the top of my foot as well too. And it hasn't taken much to kind of get that good lockdown in this shoe. Then you get further back here, and there's a good amount of padding, you know, for a kind of up-tempo daily trainer. It's not overly generous, but there's a good amount there, so you've got some comfort there and kind of, you know, extra kind of control there at the back of the shoe. The around the kind of Achilles area, it's pretty kind of accommodating as well, not too narrow, so I've had no kind of issues in terms of rub or irritation there. So yeah, overall, as I said, very good experience in the Kinvara 15. I would say it is a true to size fitting shoe, but be mindful of the fact that it is quite a narrow shoe as well too. So yeah, that's definitely the key takeaway I would take away in terms of the fit of the Kinvara 15.
For the Kinvara 15, I've actually clocked around 25 miles in testing, putting them through the usual mix of paces, everything from easy plods to tempo efforts and faster intervals. I've done all of that on the road. And as I mentioned in our first run video, this is also my first outing in the Kinvara range. I was really keen to find out why this shoe has such a loyal following, and now having put more miles in it, I absolutely get it. And it sounds to me like good news that Saucony hasn't meddled too much with this latest version. I think it's worth a big pat on the back that they haven't mixed it up too much here and change too much. The first thing I noticed about the Kinvara 15 is how light it feels in the hand, like right now, and on the foot. At 206 grams, it's practically race shoe light. When you slip it on, it feels really instantly nimble and a touch racy, just without the minimal strip back hugging uppers that you'd get from an all-out carbon race shoe. The next sensation that jumps out is the firmness of the PWRRUN cushioning, particularly when you compare it to the softer PWRRUN Plus of the Ride 17 or the softer, more springy PWRRUN PB that you'll get in the Endorphin Speed 4. For me, that makes this the kind of shoe that encourages a fast foot turnover to balance things out. I enjoyed it most when I was running lighter footed with a high turnover, probably at a faster clip. It doesn't afford as much protection as you'll get from shoes with softer, more accommodating foams, particularly if you're moving slower, I think, or just shoes with more foam. I also found that limited how far I wanted to run in it, or more importantly, how much time I wanted to spend on my feet in this shoe. There's not really enough PWRRUN underfoot here to make me want to go kind of really long. And even though I like sort of firmer, more grounded shoes, I didn't find I wanted to use it for my longest miles. So I've got this in the mix with the shoes most runners would lace up for shorter, faster efforts. That's partly down to the fit as well for me. But if you like a more direct, more traditional ride with a lower drop profile, you will like these, I think. The firmer midsole makes for reliable landings and toe-offs. I find the stability good, and you know what you're going to get in each step with this shoe. There's a happy consistency to the overall ride and the transitions. But I'd definitely say that this is a shoe that requires you to bring the effort to your run. Some shoes provide the punch and propulsion. This lower profile, more direct shoe kind of asks you to do a big chunk of the work, more than you might with something like a Hoka Mach X2 or a Saucony Endorphin Speed 4. It reminds me, in fact, a little of the Brooks Hyperion Max. So if you like that shoe, this also might be in your ballpark.
So in terms of my running time with the Kinvara 15, it has been very good overall. I can't say I've had a bad run in the shoe. I would say that maybe there's been some runs where I thought, is this the ideal shoe for this session? But ultimately, you know, it hasn't been a bad shoe, it hasn't been uncomfortable, it hasn't really caused any issues for me. Now, I've done 50k in this shoe now. That's been a mixture of kind of indoor and outdoor running. I've done a track session with it. I have also done kind of hour plus runs in it as well too, at my kind of half marathon pace. And really utilising it in a way that I would use a daily trainer or more up-tempo daily trainer, that maybe generally I would have a slightly more kind of stacked shoe, a little bit more kind of lively, kind of bouncy shoe, maybe a shoe that maybe does a little bit more of the work for me, where that's not really the case here with the Kinvara 15. Now, I haven't used a Kinvara for a few generations. I think my previous experience has been fine shoe. I think, you know, ultimately, would it be a shoe that I'd use long term? Probably not. Now, with the Kinvara 15, I think the first thing that really stood out for me and I've really liked about this shoe is that it is very light. And I think if you like the idea of a lightweight daily trainer, then this shoe kind of, you know, sits with kind of top tier carbon racing shoes in terms of overall weight. So that is a real kind of plus point for me overall. Now, when you get into the experience and the ride, as a kind of, you know, my experience of previous Kinvara shoes, and unlike a lot of other kind of cushion up-tempo daily trainer shoes that we see now, you know, you really have to engage with this shoe to get the best out of it. And, you know, ultimately when I have done that, and I think the track session that I did in it was a really good example of that, I really got the best out of the Kinvara 15. And I think ultimately, you know, from a cushioning point of view, obviously it's low profile. And from a low profile shoe, it's naturally very stable. And I think that's a very good quality to have here. That cushioning is PWRRUN, not the PWRRUN PB that we see in the Endorphin range. So not as, you know, bouncy and lively, but what I would say is, you know, crucially for me, you know, that PWRRUN kind of cushioning in the right setting can still be very effective. And I think that's definitely been the case for me in the Kinvara 15. As I said, you have to put the work in to really get the most out of it. You know, it's not the super bouncy, lively, kind of naturally bouncy, lively kind of cushioning, but when you engage with it, you really kind of push harder in it, it feels lively and it feels it has that kind of aggressive edge to it only when you really start to work in it. And for me, that's been a really nice quality. When I've done those kind of shorter sessions, when I've done that kind of track session, that's where it's felt really at home. What I really wanted to see, you know, in that kind of initial video, early kind of first run, was how it would handle over longer runs. So I've gone past an hour in this shoe. It's been generally fine at my kind of, you know, more up tempo kind of half marathon pace. It's felt fine at that. I think what I would say is when I've gone deeper in those runs, I've noticed or maybe felt that I've been lacking that little bit of extra kind of cushioning that I'd want, particularly at the hill, being a hill striker, and maybe when I'm starting to tire. I've dropped back on this shoe and I haven't had that there. That's maybe something that I felt, that would probably be a thing that I'd want from this shoe. But ultimately, I think if you like the idea of a low profile shoe, I don't think it's out of its remit to run a little bit longer. I mean, I wouldn't particularly go beyond probably kind of the half marathon distance in this shoe. I think, it's a kind of shoe you'd be using for kind of 9-10 mile kind of runs. That's kind of how I would ultimately kind of max out with it. But for kind of track sessions, kind of, interval stuff, it feels all very good. As I said, this is a low profile shoe. It's got a level of cushioning that when you put the work in, that's where you get the best rewards from it. I think ultimately the rewards are there for you, and it is a very, it does really fit that profile of an up-tempo daily trainer, just very different to the ones that we're very much kind of surrounded by now from other brands and Saucony as well too. Other thing to talk about here is the outsole. The outsole durability has been pretty good for me, as I say. I don't think it's been a high mileage shoe. It's not a huge amount of kind of rubber here. It's particularly kind of one edge of the kind of heel and at the forefoot. It's a small amount there. Gripping and traction has been fine for me. I have done a couple of rainier runs, and on wet pavement it's been absolutely fine. I think the design of the outsole does kind of add to the kind of more stable, controlled, more agile feel of the Kinvara 15. So if that's something that you like, an outsole that's going to grip, but also, dictate or influence that kind of ride as well too. That's what you get here. So yeah, for me, overall, a very good experience in the Kinvara 15. I think it's just been when I've got to those longer distances where I've maybe wanted that little bit extra kind of cushioning there, but ultimately, for the types of runs I think it's best built for, I think it works very well. So yeah, positive experience for me in the Kinvara 15.
Now that I've done more testing, my initial reaction to the Kinvara 15 from the first run still stands. This shoe didn't wow me, but I do think that I've been suckered somewhat into the big stack, springy world of super daily trainers. And I get what the Kinvara 15 is doing, and I salute it for offering a more traditional ride. There aren't many shoes still offering this direct, low-profile, light and racy feel. And if you like that kind of setup, you will like what the Kinvara 15 offers. For me, it feels like the kind of shoe that I used to love before we were treated to things like the punchier Hoka Mach X2 or the livelier Speed 4 from Saucony. It's got that light, cutback feel with an old-school directness, a lower drop, and the firmer, more responsive ride. Now, for some runners, that might feel a bit dated in terms of the overall package. For others, it might be the way you think shoes should have stayed. If you're in the latter and you like that kind of ride, the Kinvara delivers it really, really quite well. I think there are some big positives here. It's a shoe that takes a while to break in, but it balances a lower, more trad kind of stack with good ground contact and just enough protection. Does that really nicely. It's just enough rocker to make the transition smooth enough and give that feel that what you've got here is a slightly modernised old school shoe. It's not maximal, not minimal, but sits somewhere in between. It's also pretty keenly priced.
So my vote on the Saucony Kinvara 15 is that it's a pretty polished up-tempo, non-plated daily trainer shoe, definitely designed for faster days, not easier days. And I would say that if you are a Kinvara fan or a fan of the Kinvara of old, this definitely is going to appeal to you, probably more so than the kind of previous versions to the Kinvara 15. I think if you are looking for something that kind of bucks the trend of the kind of bigger stats, kind of up-tempo daily trainers that we're seeing now, then this might appeal to you as well too. And it's at a pretty good price as well. The key takeaways for me would be that it is a very good kind of nice weighted shoe. It's nice and light. I think the PWRRUN cushioning works very well in this shoe, and don't be put off by the fact that it doesn't have that PWRRUN PB in there. And when you put the work in, that's when you get the best results out of this shoe. I think I look at what other kind of non-plated up-tempo daily trainers are out there and kind of the shoes that potentially I would use for the same types of runs. I think the ones that kind of stand out for me, which are a little bit more stacked in terms of that cushioning, I think the New Balance Rebel V4, which is very close in price to this shoe, it does kind of sit below the Kinvara 15 in sales as well too. That shoe is an up-tempo one as well, feels very good at kind of up-tempo and faster paces, maybe not so much easier paces like the Kinvara. And I think maybe has a little bit more in terms of that foam, in terms of being, more comfortable at longer kind of distances or kind of mid to kind of long distance runs. I think the other one as well is the Mach 6, which again is around the same price as the Kinvara 15, a little bit more in terms of that cushioning, maybe not as firm feeling. Again, I think it's a shoe that probably works a little bit better for those longer runs, but also can work for those kind of shorter, sharper runs, kind of interval sessions as well too, and has a bit of speed in there as well. So there are definitely some options there. But if you are looking for something that is, as I say, kind of low stacked, really kind of, about you putting the work in to get the best out of that shoe, then the Kinvara 15 is definitely one to look at, for those kind of faster days, kind of interval days, those days when you're maybe not doing your max kind of, distances, but maybe just below that, and you want something that's going to feel very agile and, generally very good to run in. So yeah, that's my take on the Saucony Kinvara 15. If you're looking for a non-plated, up-tempo daily trainer shoe for faster days, this is absolutely one to take a look at. Okay, so there you have it. That is our multi-tester take on the Saucony Kinvara 15. Now, if you've got any questions about this video or this shoe or other shoes you want to see it compared to as well too, do let us know in the comments below. As always, like and subscribe, hit that little bell to find out about our latest videos. And yeah, we'll see you for the next Run Testers video.